right. Hey everyone, thanks for stopping in at J Hood Creative again. Today I'm going to touch on kind of answering my own call. Showing This is going to be building up to show you my 5 favorite comic books, and like I'm sure everyone, breaking this down by process of elimination to exactly what your favorites are is difficult, and it's no easier for me. And one of the stipulations in my comic books was I didn't want to see collections or trade paperbacks. I wanted to see floppies. And I did that and kind of painted myself into a corner because one of the books I was going to show was going to be a collection. And I'll have to save showing that book for another day. I also mentioned in the video that the comics I was showing in that video weren't necessarily my favorites. And looking back, some of them borderline may have broken into my 5 favorites, but some of them kind of didn't count because they were reprints or were collections just in like floppy comic book form back in the day before they had trade paperbacks. So I'll just flash through a few of those that I showed earlier. This was the Superboy issue that had things like the second appearance of the Teen Titans, the first appearance of Wonder Girl, had reprints of a lot of Golden Age material, and it had a cool Legion of Superheroes story in it. You can see Stars and Stripes there on the cover, and there's a cool wraparound cover on this particular issue. Another one of my favorites was this Legion of Superheroes story. I told the story in the video about the remark on that. I don't know why it is what it is with some of these comics where, I don't know, it just hits me at the right spot at the right time. These books aren't necessarily keys. Some of them I'll be showing are, but this definitely wasn't a key. Nothing other than Karate Kid getting a karate-like uniform. That happens in the book. I guess that makes it a key. Somebody gets a new uniform, it's a key. And this one is, there's a little bit more in depth on this one. It does have a great story, great art by Jim Starlin. But what happened here was, so I bought this off the rack. I wasn't like a Legion of Superheroes collector, so it wasn't that I went back the next month and got the next one, but years down the road, I happened to pick up another issue of Legion of Superheroes, and it developed into a storyline that I kind of liked, and just coincidentally, it tied into this story. So that was kind of fun. If you hear a little giggling in the background, I've got Coach Vic here in the room with me. He's a buddy of mine. You'll get to know him real soon if you haven't by the time this video posts. This one probably would have made my list of favorite comics. But again, it is a collection. It does have one new story in the front, and everything else is kind of reprint. So the fact that I showed it before and I said that the books I was showing probably wouldn't be in my top 5, so I'm disqualifying this from my top 5. Yeah, go ahead.
So it says there are 100 pages for only 60 cents. How many pages is a normal comic?
The page count has kind of changed over the years. Usually we consider 24 pages. Mm-hmm. And in that 24 pages, not necessarily every page is actually a comic book story. There's lots of ads and stuff.
Sea monkeys.
Yeah. So we give artists flack these days because an artist can't keep up with doing, I think they do 22 pages in a story now, give or take. But we give artists flack because they can't keep up with a monthly schedule of doing 22 pages. And part of the reason that they were able to back in the day was they'd have a lead-in story of maybe only 16 pages, and then they'd have a backup story of like 4 to 6, maybe 8 pages that another artist would have drawn. So the workload wasn't quite as heavy back then as it is today. And the art today, everybody has a lot higher standards. So there's that. There. So I mentioned the more modern Legion of Superheroes. So this isn't the issue that tied into that last issue I talked about, but And again, I don't know why it was this particular issue I really enjoyed. It's just kind of an off the wall. Um, it's just a single issue story. It's not part of a big storyline or anything. The art in it's pretty good. I can't remember the artist. He didn't do a big volume of work, but his work was real distinctive and pretty cool. Um, I like the cover. I like the colors on it. They really pop. And this is a rebuy. The one that I bought, the staples were just about loose because I looked at it so much. This is the first issue of the New Teen Titans that I bought off the shelf. Um, Again, I don't know what it is. I really liked the cover. Um, this is part of the you know really iconic work by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. George Perez is the artist. Um, when I in this time period of buying comics early on, let's see what year this was. I'm guessing 1980. That's my prediction. 1981. So 11-year-old Jay Hood didn't understand the process of making comics. The fact that there were people whose job it was to draw comic books. So even though I found the art in this appealing, it was really one of the things that kind of drew me in. I didn't know that we acknowledged George Perez as the artist in it, or Marv Wolfman as the writer for that matter. That would come in the next following few years. Okay, so this book, up until like this final cutoff of what I was going to pick for my 5 pick, this was definitely in the running. If you ask me a year from now, if you ask me when I'm walking down the street, I might say this is one of my top 5 comics. But for reasons I'll explain, when I do the top 5, I felt I had to pull this out. I didn't want to discuss storylines, and this tied into an issue in a storyline, and I didn't want to have back-to-back issues in my top 5. So this is the one that didn't make the cut. That gives you a hint as to what might be in my top 5. Yeah.
What's a Toys R Us?
Okay, so in this month, I think it was the whole month of comics that Marvel published, they ran every comic in the month had this banner on it for a Toys R Us ad. Win a Toys R Us shopping spree. Grand prize minimum value of $3,000. Details inside. I've never gone in and found the page and read the rules to find out what you would have to do to qualify.
I mean, because I've never seen a Toys R Us store.
Yeah. My kids will have an inkling of a memory of having gone to a toy store, and it's a sad state of affairs.
True.
Okay, so this is another one that kind of tips my hat to what I'll be showing in my top 5. This is the first issue of Daredevil I ever bought, and oddly enough, I bought this one in Canada on a family vacation. And everyone that knows the history of Daredevil knows that in issue 180, Elektra died. In issue 190, she is resurrected. And in this issue, it's pretty much just cover to cover Daredevil and his ninja pals fighting a bunch of other ninjas. And for my money, at age, let's see, we got a 60-cent. This would be a couple of years after the other one. So this is Thought Glasses, 1982. So just a year after. Wow, comics shot up 20 cents in the course of a year. I seem to remember a 50. Maybe there was never a 50-cent price point. Yeah, because the Teen Titans one I showed was 40 cents, right? No, the Teen Titans one was a 50-cent. Okay, I know for a lot the 50-cent prices didn't last long. They were 40 cents. Yeah, the Superboy for 50 cents was from 1970.
Oh.
So cover price on a comic book in 1970 was They were 15 cents to 25, probably 25 cents in 1970, I'm guessing. We should have a show sometime. We'll discuss like what the cover prices were over the years, and then we'll do the math and compare it to the rate of inflation and see how much we're getting ripped off at $5 a copy now.
Don't remind me.
So yeah, so other notable thing about this one, this is towards the end of the Frank Miller run, and though Frank Miller's the writer on this and often gets credited as the artist, at this point he was doing mostly just breakdowns, and Klaus Janson was doing the final art and in the end of the Daredevil run.
Why is Spider-Man on the cover?
Okay, so this would be a direct edition, and most of the audience will know this. Okay, and then so this has got a barcode, so this would be sold at a grocery store, anywhere they would have had barcode scanners.
Okay.
And then this would be considered a direct-to-market edition where it was sold to comic book stores, which in 1980-ish, that was just becoming a thing. So this issue, I have to look it up. This one might be one that might be a little bit more expensive because it is, or worth a little bit more because it's a direct market versus a
Grocery store
yeah
shelf
newsstand, as comic book
newsstand.
C. Woodard would say. So next book is a Moon Knight, and it's autographed by Bill Sienkiewicz in white across it. So one of the things, one of my unpopular opinions is sometimes the reprint is better than the original edition. So where, I'd have to research this to see. This might be a case where it was a full color magazine, but so these Moon Knight, the stories in this comic, they did a 3-issue kind of collection. Each issue has, I think, 2 or 3 stories in it. These were pulled out of, I think it was Rampaging Hulk magazine. It was a Hulk comic book, but in a larger magazine format. The art was a little bit more sophisticated. They would use, I was going to say that they used like gray tones, but I think they might have actually done this in full color. It's one of the things where the magazines are a little bit harder to find, so I haven't gone back to collect the original material out of these. But since it was a magazine format, they were aiming it more at an adult rather than kids.
Okay.
So the story's a lot more mature. And this was Bill Sienkiewicz doing Moon Knight before they did the Moon Knight series, before Moon Knight got his own title. And the art in it is Bill Sienkiewicz in his kind of Neil Adams knockoff style. But the coloring in this is, and the fact that they printed it on really nice paper, it just makes it a lot more beautiful to kind of take in. So so the issue 2 and 3 I'd found as a kid in one of the few comic stores we had around here at the time. They didn't have issue 1. Ended up getting that later, but I don't know what it was about the stories they had in issue 2 and 3. In issue 2, Moon Knight takes on a guy called the Axeman or something like that. He kind of wears like a Joker kind of mask, and Moon Knight has always been kind of Marvel's analog to Batman. It was written by Doug Munch, who wrote a bunch of Batman stuff at the time too. The kind of the Neil Adams style of art kind of made them tie it together. Mark Spector was a millionaire playboy type. Their origins were completely different, but it was pretty much just a guy in tights fighting people in the night. But in this one, the Axeman actually attacks Moon Knight's girlfriend and nails her in the back with a hatchet, and it's like, this was before things like The Killing Joke even, so we hadn't been used to seeing that kind of level of intensity or violence in comics before. So as it hit me as a youngin', it really made an impact. I've since gone on and I've collected a lot of Moon Knight books. I don't have the first appearance or anything. I let go of a lot of the main Moon Knight title and kind of been buying that back as I run across it in the wild for reasonable prices. And then, so this is going to be the last of the runners up, and this kind of came to me much later in life. This came out while I was in college. So this is the first issue of Lobo. Up until this point, Lobo had only appeared, I think, in Omega Men, and this is the series. It was a 4-issue miniseries that really gave Lobo his start. Along with this, about the same time period, an issue of Heavy Metal republished. It was probably a British graphic novel called Slaying the Horned God that had art by the same artist as Simon Bisley. And okay, so we got the perfect storm of, this is a great character, great art in the book. It was a little bit more edgy, but Simon Bisley was a master draftsman at Anatomy, very influenced by Frank Frazetta. So he did these awesome painted covers, and then the Slaying the Horned God was a fully painted story, and it was like graphic novel in length, so 48 or 72 pages or something like that. And then so I get that. I'm in art school with all these other artists, and we just sit there and just drool and try and dissect and figure out how he did this cool painted style. And this is, this predates Alex Ross by a few years. And up until this point, you didn't see a lot of painted artwork other than coming from Bill Sienkiewicz on his New Mutants run, and then things like Stray Toasters and Elektra and things like that. So that sums up all of my runners-up. My not favorite comics. These are not my favorite comics, debatedly. So
Nice autograph.
yeah, so this got, what's it say? Bite Me from Alan Grant, who signed it. And then it's a little bit harder to see, but I've got Bisley's autograph right there. So, right, so that wraps us up. And thanks for stopping by. Like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time. Remember, faith, family, comic books. We'll see you next time.